Meanwhile, Democrats are returning to Capitol Hill amid fallout from sexual harassment allegations against two prominent lawmakers. The longest-serving member of Congress, John Conyers, gave up his role as senior Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, and Senator Al Franken is also speaking out, saying that he's embarrassed and ashamed about accusations against him. Talk radio news anchor Leanne Tweeden says Franken forcibly kissed and groped her during a USO tour in 2006. He apologized for a photo showing his hands over her chest, but says that he remembers the kissing incident differently. Tweeden is just one of at least 4 women who claim the Minnesota senator groped them while posing for pictures. The Senate Ethics Committee is investigating those claims. In an exclusive interview, Franken spoke with reporter Esme Murphy of our Minneapolis station, WCCO, about the allegations.
Have you ever placed a hand on some woman's butt?
You know, I can't say that that hasn't happened. I take thousands and thousands of pictures. Sometimes in crowded and chaotic situations. I can't say I haven't done that. And I am very sorry if these women experience that. And I have to say that I have to be a lot more sensitive and a lot more careful in these when I take a picture, when I meet someone, and I'm going to make sure that this does not happen again.
Can you really continue to claim kind of a moral high ground on some of these issues, including the Trump-Russia investigation, when a lot of people feel you've been less than transparent about these particular allegations?
Well, I think I'm a good questioner. I think that the questions that I'm asking don't go to my credibility. They go to the credibility of the witness. They go to the credibility.
But hasn't your credibility been undermined?
I would say yes, and I have a long way back. I have a long way back to win back the trust of the people of Minnesota. I've let people down. I've let the people of Minnesota down. I've let my friends and staff and supporters down, my family down.
All right, so let us bring in Ed O'Keefe. He is a CBS News political contributor and a congressional reporter for the Washington Post. And of course, Ed, we are going to start with Al Franken's apology. I want to know what you made of it. Did you think it was sincere? And where does he go from here?
He's clearly aggrieved and embarrassed. He's doing a round of these interviews with Minnesota news outlets, finally, more than a week since the allegations. After hiding out at his daughter's home in Washington over the Thanksgiving break, he's finally emerging to talk about this. Look, I think he understands, everyone in Washington understands, that unless something more egregious is revealed, and if he can ride out this ethical investigation over the next year or so, we'll see come 2020 when he's up for re-election whether or not he's able to run for re-election and gets re-elected by Minnesotans. But I think he's clearly in an uncomfortable position, which is of his own making. And as he said, you know, he doesn't recall these incidents being the way they were described, and yet I think that's a reflection on perhaps somebody not understanding how the people he was meeting felt about it all.
Right. So what does he do? Sort of write it out? Just continue with the apologies?
Yeah, there are textbook examples of how to do this. Ted Kennedy's probably the best example. Let's remember the Chappaquiddick car accident, the issues with his nephew in the 90s, and just the fact that he had allegations throughout his career. He kept his head down when they got serious, was able to persevere. Bob Menendez, the New Jersey senator from just across the river, is just coming out from under a federal corruption trial, has kept his head down, and may ultimately prevail as well. So other colleagues have been through this in both parties, and he can learn from that, or he may stumble and have to find his way out at some point in the next few years.
So let's talk about Congressman John Conyers. He is stepping down as sort of the top-ranking member of the Judiciary Committee.
Yep.
There's an Ethics Committee investigation going on. What are you hearing on the Hill about the response to him and the reaction?
I think there's some concern about how House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, in essence, didn't respond as aggressively as she might have if it had been somebody else.
Right.
Part of that is, as we understand it now, she knew that he was going to eventually stepped down from his leadership perch on the Judiciary Committee. It was taking, I think, a little longer than she would have liked, because she understands that in this environment, when these things come up, you got to get out of the way, admit fault, and see what happens.
Or else you become a major distraction.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the fact that she called him an icon, look, that speaks to the fact that he is the longest serving member in Congress right now, 27 terms, 88-year-old, founder of the Congressional Black Caucus, obviously a civil rights activist throughout his entire congressional career. So there's a lot there. This, however, in this environment is seen as unacceptable, and we'll see whether he can even run for re-election next year.
Right.
He is an 88-year-old guy. It may be time anyway, and there's been talk about this for years, that perhaps he has overstayed his welcome. But that'll be up to the voters in his Detroit area district to decide.
Do you think the outcome of the Ethics Committee investigation will make a difference?
Absolutely. It would, and it does for Al Franken as well. If they find something more serious, or if the woman who was involved in this settlement gets the opportunity to speak out, as he now has, we may learn more, and it may be so troubling that he has to leave sooner than he'd like.
All right, Ed, before we let you go, you have been reporting on the long list of things on the to-do list that the Congress has to get to before the end of the year. Taxes, of course, huge, but what are the most pressing issues?
So circle December 8th on your calendars.
Okay.
That's the day that the lights could go out across the federal government if Congress doesn't come to a new agreement on how much money they should be spending. That fight probably gets kicked into later in the month. They give them a little more time to sort out a bigger deal. They've got to figure out how much money the government's going to spend over the next few years. It could be up to $200 billion more than what they're currently doing. And they've got to determine whether that spending agreement comes with any other host of tricky issues. How much money to pay for hurricane and wildfire relief across the country, whether to use this as the opportunity to settle the issue of dreamers, those young immigrants who are going to lose their legal protections in March, and a host of other things related to health care. There's a community, or the Children's Health Insurance Program. 5 states could run out of money to pay for those programs in the next few weeks. A lot of urgent issues. It's as if Congress is writing 4 year-end term papers in the course of 3 weeks. If you ever crashed
you're giving me a headache just remembering what that was like.
That can be.
Yes, often there is a lot of hand-wringing, though, leading up to the deadline, and wondering whether or not they will have to work through the holidays or not. You know, do you see them getting this stuff done, maybe an 11th hour?
They'll get some of it done, but I suspect something, whether it's the spending agreement and the immigration issue, or even the tax issue, gets punted into January. Problem is, they don't want to be doing anything controversial or big ticket before or after Easter, which is what, April 1? Because at that point, everyone's running for re-election. So everything's got to be buttoned up by the end of the first quarter of 2018.
All right.
We'll see if they can do it.
See. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much.
Good to see you.